Hey TCC family, welcome to this week's stroke breakdown with Coach Courtney and Coach Tyler. This week we are focusing on backstroke. Hopefully you had a chance to read Coach Damon's news article. He had a lot of great information on the stroke and some great YouTube videos to go along with it. So before we get started with this, let's take a moment to get to know Coach Courtney and her swim experience and just kind of what she went through as a swimmer. So Courtney, as a swimmer, what was the toughest part of backstroke for you to learn?
I think the toughest part of backstroke for me to learn, I wasn't a pure backstroker. Really, for me, using backstroke was, just a part of my IM. One of my main events was the 400 IM, so I really, had to look at the IM had to look at backstroke as a portion of a different race. But for me, I think the hardest thing for me to learn specifically with backstroke was, again, just maintaining a steady kick. I think, that's something when we get tired, that's the first thing to go is our legs. And I was always a very, very good kicker in practice when we were kicking. But with backstroke, I think the biggest part that I struggled with when I was racing was just getting distracted by I don't know if there's a lot of things to focus on, or if there's just, for me in the IM, it wasn't, an enjoyable part of the IM for me. So it's like, I think my mind just went more to wanting to be done with backstroke. So I think I was focusing more on getting to the end of it. And I think that's kind of ultimately where my stroke would fall apart, was because I was focusing on finishing that portion of the IM and not so much on maintaining my kick and maintaining, my head position, my body position, and keeping my stroke together.
Awesome. So what tips would you have for swimmers who struggle with that same issue, struggle with just wanting to get through backstroke? And yeah.
I think the lesson there is really just valuing that as something that you do struggle with. I think, obviously we can't be good at everything. I mean, it comes to mind, John always, giving you the set of, your fourth best, your third best, your second best, and your best, and never really referring to any stroke as your worst stroke, because, you always want to make sure that even though you're not that good at it, it's still a valuable part of your training. It's still a valuable part of, especially the IM. If you, discount any particular portion of that race, that's where you're always going to struggle. I think for swimmers that do struggle with, I hate this certain stroke, or I'm not good at this, still finding value in, trying to, push that to the best possible limit that you can. For me, my backstroke was never going to be my best event, but I could have taken more steps to make my backstroke, as good as my backstroke could be. So I think for kids that struggle, just finding value in strokes that you're not that jazzed about.
And one way possibly for swimmers to look at it too is let's take the 4IM. If backstroke is their weakest stroke, that's where they have the most room for growth.
Yeah, I mean, it's the greatest opportunity for improvement. Exactly.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start breaking down the stroke. So we'll start with body position. So Coach Courtney, what is proper body position and why is it so important to developing a great backstroke?
Well, I think having proper alignment is really the foundation of all four strokes. If your head position's out of whack, that affects your hips. If your if you're rotating too far to one side, that's gonna affect how straight you go. So, your overall body position is really what's controlling the entire stroke. If your head's up too high and your hips are too far down, that's increased resistance on the water, and also it's decreasing your distance per stroke because your body's going through the water like that, as opposed to getting yourself nice and level and being able to, not necessarily be floating on top of the water, but, for your body to just work as one piece, your arms are working together with your legs rather than your legs being down at the bottom of the pool and your arms now having to do twice as much work because that's extra weight, and you're not moving forward as well as you should be.
Yeah. So one way I like to think of it is, I mean, compared to other activities, running, cycling, I mean, going uphill versus going flat.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're running, I mean, even one thing as a coach that I always kind of did, that I carry over from swimming, from my own career is, I actually tried to do weird things, just to see what they felt like. And I think that's something that our swimmers are oftentimes afraid to do, is to just try something and see what it feels like. And just play around with strokes in a way that's, that is intentionally incorrect, just to see what it feels like. It's like going back to what you're saying with running, imagine trying to run and like leaning forward at the same time. Like that would just feel completely bizarre. And, but on backstroke or sometimes in swimming, that's the way we swim, with our head down, and, our body's not really engaged. So I do like to transition, stuff to other activities, just to make some of the swimmers aware of how ridiculous it would be if you actually did something the way that sometimes our swimmers swim.
Yes. Oh, and in terms of body awareness and feel of the water, I mean, we could spend a whole week going over that.
We spent the entire year on that, Tyler.
Oh, yeah. So we'll definitely touch on that more in another at another time. But so in terms of backstroke body position on these pictures that you see, have you ever done the cup on your head drill?
Oh yeah, John, that was one that John liked to do a lot. And it would definitely fire him up if the cup fell off of our head. But yeah, he used to do that one quite a bit. Water bottles, cups, also, he used to do the quarter on the head, but then we figured out a way to like put the tip of the quarter in our cap so it never fell off, even if we would do a flip turn.
Yep.
So yeah, we got in trouble for that one.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, moral of the story, don't cheat when you're doing these exercises.
Yeah, that's a good thought, good idea. So the second picture, the one at the bottom, what are your thoughts on that body alignment?
I think the alignment is pretty solid. I got a little bit of a glare on my computer here. Yeah, I mean, the alignment's good. One of the things you notice with it is, she's got kind of a straight arm pull underneath, which I would kind of imagine earlier in her pull might have added a little bit of tipping to her stroke. But, given where the picture is now, her alignment looks pretty solid.
Awesome. And just these bullet points for all of you reading along, just some basic principles to body position for you to just be aware of. So let's go ahead and move on to one of your favorite topics, the kick.
Yeah, there it is.
So you are famous at TCC for emphasizing the kick.
Yep.
So why is the kick stressed so much, and what are some of the elements to a successful backstroke kick?
Well, I think, going back to our earlier question of, that is an area where I recognize in my own career that was something that, was lacking in my backstroke was, maintaining a steady kick. So, as a coach, I want to definitely make sure that, something that I feel like, would have helped me, get to that next step would have definitely, helped me. So I want to kind of keep passing on, not only the things that that I have studied and things that I know, but also things that stuck out to me that I feel like I was kind of missing in my own career. Um, but with kicking, definitely having the right mechanics is super important, because you see kids all the time, their legs are just going a mile a minute, but they're not really going anywhere. And a lot of times, kind of going back to the previous slide, the whitewater kick scenario is, that while that's good and the effort is there, and you want to see the white water, there's definitely a method to creating that white water, which is, really pushing the water from up underneath. And the white water is really just the water being disturbed from underneath the water, rather than, your kick operating right at the surface and, just kind of splashing and creating this big old mess of, bubbles and water, and, just creating these big pockets of air to where you're not getting any sort of acceleration from your kick. You're just, kind of splashing in place. And I see, a lot of our kids doing that. And so I think just that basic understanding of, pushing the water through the surface rather than letting your feet crash down into the surface is really, a fundamental thing that needs to be kind of addressed.
That's a very good point. So, for instance, this top picture where it shows the arrow going up and the upward kick provides propulsion, that's kind of what you're talking about. That upward motion pushes the water up and creates that white water that we talk about.
Correct.
Awesome. And then what about where does the power come from in terms of the backstroke kick?
Well, the power comes, really from your hip. Then another thing that we see a lot of our kids doing is, when they're kicking, we see a lot of kicking from the knees, and then it turns into just this kind of shuffling motion going on, where you're not really getting any drive from the hip through, kind of into a whip motion to be able to, collect that water and push it up through the surface of the water.
Awesome. And then how big should the kick be? How big do we want the flutter kick to be? Do we want them kicking as far as possible?
No, not at all. You definitely want it to be big enough to where you're getting a powerful drive out of your kick, but you want it to be able to stay inside your body line. If you start pulling your leg back too far, then that starts, kind of pulling your hip downward, and then you lose that alignment where, you want to be able to maintain that rotation without, having your kick messing up your hip rotation. So, you want your kick to really operate kind of inside of a tube almost, where it's like your body is, kind of rocking back and forth, and your kick should be able to continuously go inside that rotation rather than going, kind of side to side like that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if you could actually see that or not.
Yep. No, I saw it.
Okay.
So in the slideshow, there's a 5-gallon bucket there.
Yeah.
So would that be a good thought process for people to think that they're kicking inside of a bucket?
Yeah, definitely. That looks painful to me.
A soft bucket.
Soft bucket. But another way you can do it is by having kids vertical kick like up against the wall, and making sure that, they're not, going back and forth, rotating like that, but just being able to stay straight up against the wall. So that way you're not kicking too far forward as well.
Oh, that's a great drill right there. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the catch, the pole, and the recovery. So when we talk about those, what is the most common mistake that you see in swimmers when they're catching, they're pulling, they're recovering on backstroke?
I think one thing that I see a lot of, and I like to call this the water polo backstroke, is just, instead of setting your arm in, just in a full extension right up above your head, you see a lot of people kind of setting in out wide over here, and you kind of end up with this super flat backstroke, and you don't end up getting rotation. It's just a short, choppy stroke. And then also by setting in out here, you end up kind of pushing, kind of sideways. So going straight is also a challenge, and that's really created from the pole. That's kind of making people zigzag back and forth.
Okay, so when the arm enters real wide, they end up pushing themselves to the side and go back and forth. Gotcha.
And then another thing that I see people doing a lot, and this causes some rotational problems too, is when they're finishing their pull, you see a lot of kind of this motion where they end up finishing pushing water kind of down towards the bottom of the pool, versus kind of like your arena dude over here. You see him pushing water kind of down towards his feet, and then there's a little bit of flick of the wrist, but it's almost in the recovery.
Right.
So, a lot of our swimmers, we see this kind of flick of the wrist, and then they just kind of let their hand just lay there. And you end up kind of throwing off the rotation of the shoulders and the hips together. So really, again, looking at the arena dude, he's kind of going, and there's a little bit of that flick of the wrist, but his arm doesn't stop. It's going straight into the recovery of his next stroke.
Right.
So I think that's a very important portion of the backstroke, where a lot of our kids kind of do it one stroke at a time, and they get messed up in their stroke because it's not a continuous cycle helping their pull flow through.
Awesome. So basically eliminating the inefficiencies in the stroke by just maintaining a nice tempo.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead, and we're going to put everything that we covered already together. We're going to be watching a video of Kathleen Baker. She will be in this video setting the world record in the 100-meter backstroke, going 58 flat. The previous world record was 58.10. So just as you watch, it's a quick video. Watch their kicks. Watch them kick into the turn, out of the turn, into the finish, because that's something a lot of our swimmers, they stop kicking once they start counting their strokes into the turn or the finish. So pay attention to that. Watch the pull, the catch, the recovery, where the arm is entering the water, and just enjoy. Here we go. Uh-oh.
A world record swim! What a field, though, Ted. What a field. You have 6 swimmers that swam under a minute in the preliminaries. 1 second separates the top 8 swimmers. 4 of those 7 times that were swum this morning are ranked in the top 7 in the world. That's how good this field is right now. Baker, wow, what an out by Kathleen Baker. Boy, she is out very fast, though. Will Regan Smith be able to go by Smoliga, though? She's right above Baker. It's Baker. Regan Smith trying, so is Smoliga. Is Baker going to hang on? She is. Kathleen Baker to win it. A world record swim.
Woo. Now, Court, on that, did Kathleen Baker stop her kick?
No, not at all.
Nope. That was one heck of a kick right there.
Yeah, and this is something that I tell my 330 group quite often, is that you kick until the end of the race, not until you get tired. And I think that's something that a lot of a lot of kids definitely struggle with is, as soon as they get tired, it's like, all right, well, just gonna soften it up a little bit, and then that has big implications for the rest of your race when you just back your legs off just a little bit. It affects your entire race. So you want to make sure that, again, at practice, you're training your legs to go for the whole, prescribed distance rather than, just until they get tired. Because, what you do in practice is exactly what's going to happen in your race. If that's the way you practice, then in your race, you're going to look great until you get tired, and then that's it. So at practice, it might not be perfect 100% of the time, but if every single time you keep working on, pushing your legs just a little bit further, say if you're going 100 backstroke or 100 free, and your legs start getting tired at the 75, just keep pushing it. And, they may kind of burn out, at 80 yards, but, the next time you do it, if it gets to 85 and then 90, then 95, you got to keep kind of building that up. It's a long process to be able to develop a kick like that. And I think a lot of times, our swimmers look at it in terms of I can do it or I can't do it, and less of it's a process that I'm working towards. So I think that's a good thing to really pay attention to is, just chipping away at the distances as much as you can.
So you're telling me that swimmers can't just go to a swim meet and win without training?
You can definitely go to a swim meet and win, but I think that's a very contextual situation. You can go to the meet and you can win your heat, and you can still add 10 seconds to your time if you're not in a good heat. So I think, I think the big takeaway from that is really you can't go to a swim meet and win against yourself if you're not putting the time. You can beat other kids. That's good for you, But, if you want to continuously, beat your personal best times, if you want to continuously win against yourself and keep taking that next step, it doesn't do you any good to compare yourself against other kids. There's always going to be somebody out there, whether you're the best swimmer in the world, you can be Caleb Dressel, you can be Michael Phelps, but, there's always going to be somebody coming up that's coming for you. So it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're the best swimmer in the world, you got to be working against you and trying to be, the best version of your athlete that you can be, rather than, focusing on, okay, well, this person's doing this and this person's doing that. Okay, you have no control over what or who is doing what. You have to work on the things that you can control and not anything else.
And that's another great topic that we'll go into more detail at another time, but that's an awesome subject. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. So with some of the things that we covered today, you're going to be able to practice this in front of the mirror. You can practice the stroke, the rotation, the pull, the recovery. Just get in front of a mirror and practice it. Your muscle memory will help carry over once we get back into the pool. And just that visualization of seeing yourself swimming that way is going to be extremely helpful. And make sure you write down something that you learned. Again, just the more you can internalize this information, the better it's going to sink in, and you're going to absorb it, and you're going to put it into practice once we get back in the water. And just find a swimmer that you look up to and you admire. Find them on YouTube, watch their races, watch how they swim. And a lot of times the easiest way to learn is to copy, is to mimic others. So, and just ask questions. If you have a question, reach out to one of the coaches. We're here to help you, or we want to answer your questions and help you learn and grow. So hopefully you found this to be helpful. Courtney, thank you so much for your input and insights and wisdom. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next week. Take care, guys.